We covered a lot of fantasy football strategies this offseason. Zero RB, hero RB, robust RB, every RB you could think of. But today, I'm going to give you my draft strategy, what I tell people in passing when I got like a minute or two, when they ask me what they should do in their fantasy drafts. I'm going to do it here, just a little bit more extended out. That way, you got a good idea when you're doing your drafts this weekend. You got a good idea of the concepts, the roster building strategies to help build your team the most optimal way of how you see fit, how you see the players coming off the board, and everything else. Before we dig in, though, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're strategizing for these drafts every single day. We're looking at these players. We're doing deep dives every single day, and that does not stop when the season starts. Matter of fact, it ramps up more because we talk about the waiver wire every day, on top of doing deep dives on the waiver wire players and helping you set your lineups. Click that button. Stop missing out. But there are some things you need to look at before heading into your draft. And you need to think about your team build. And I would look at it more of a macroeconomic sense and look at the values because they matter in your team build over specific players, because your team build matters more than player A versus player B and the general course of what player X do. Because if you get caught chasing certain players, you're going to get caught reaching for certain players or certain positions, and next thing you know, a player pool gets zapped and you're hurting at wide receiver, tight end, or something. So just be aware. Be aware of your roster construction. Pretty much, if you got a good baseline roster construction of every position built out before the middle rounds or before the end of the middle rounds, you're going to be good to go. You're going to be set. Watch the draft board too, because other people are implementing strategies. Some people are going zero RB, some people are going hero RB, some people are going wide receiver heavy to begin with, running back heavy. If you got a couple league mates going zero RB, plucking wide receivers, the wide receiver pool is going to end up drier a little bit quick. So that's an indicator that you may want to go wide receiver a little early, or go a little harder at wide receiver early and just stack up on RB2s and flyer running backs, because I've seen it where leagues get decimated and all of a sudden you're in round 6, 7, 8. Half the league's like, where do the wide receivers go? But these three guys over here just drafted them all, and you think the wide receiver pool's deep. But on the top end, you want some of those elite wide receivers. You got 2 or 3 guys there just stacking up the top guys while everybody else was hammering running backs like it was 1995. Don't get married to your rosters either. You're not going to be stuck with these players. Half of these players are going to get hurt. Half of these players are going to bust. That's just the name of the game. That's why fantasy football is so frustrating. So if you're going in the draft with that logic, you're going to be able to build your roster, look at these players, just go after the values, go after the players that's falling down the board, and make sound decisions and know the player pools. That's going to allow you to be able to do that. You're going to know the runs. You're going to know who's going to be left on the board. You're going to know that there's going to be 5 wide receivers sitting there in round 5 that you can look at. You know the RB2s are in the middle of the draft. You know you're going after those upside players in the double-digit rounds. Draft with the waiver wire in mind. You do not want to get stuck with roster cloggers on your team who are scoring enough to keep them rostered but not enough to win you weeks. But when we look at rounds 1 through 4, you want to leave the start of your draft stacked at wide receiver, but you don't want to completely forget about running back either. You want at least one good running back from this range, and it could be in the first round, it could be in the second round, it could be both first round, second round, then you start hammering wide receiver. It could be a mix and match, but you want to come out of these first 4 rounds feeling very good at wide receiver. It's more of a feel thing than a numbers thing. Players get hurt, players don't get targeted as often as you thought, things happen. It's more of a feel thing. With your build, you want to feel good at wide receiver, you want to feel stacked, but still feel kind of good at running back. You want at least one very good running back, whether it's Pacheco, Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker, a little cheaper if you want, or Josh Jacobs, and you want to be elite at wide receiver. You want an elite guy, or you want to be stacked up with those really good guys. And that is up to you. Who do you like, where they're falling off the board? You also want to follow the board and how things are flowing. Plus, plan for tight end and quarterback before your draft? Do you want to pay up for quarterback? Are you wanting to stream your quarterbacks, play the matchups every week? Same thing with tight end. Know that going in, because these players are going to go in certain ranges. You got an idea of where they're going in drafts. My philosophy with this is I'm not totally against paying up for these positions, but I got to have complete ick at wide receiver and running back before I look at those onesie positions. If you got weird scorings that make these players more valuable at tight end and quarterback, then I understand that's a different format. But if you're feeling ick at running back and wide receiver, then you may want to start thinking at tight end and quarterback. If not, keep rolling and pounding out wide receivers and running backs. Rounds 5 through 9. This is the RB2 range. You should be looking at your RB2 somewhere in this range. It could be an Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery. It could be a Zamir White, Tony Pollard situation, or Raheem Mostert. Whatever your flavor is, you can go after that. Honestly, your wide receiver 2s and 3s should already be drafted. However, you better make sure it's shored up in this part of the draft or you're going to be hurting. You should be looking at your wide receiver flex plays and upside plays. This is Lottery Ticket Alley for the wide receiver position. Rounds 7 through 9. You got those top-end rookies, those top-end second-year guys who are looking to make a name for themselves, who's got a good prospect profile, whose talent is worth more than the draft spot, but they're rookies in their situation. Guys like Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey. Not all those guys are going to hit. You're going to have to pick your lottery ticket, but the draft is saying, hey, this is where we're getting our lottery tickets. You can throw in Jonathan Brooks as a high-end expensive lottery ticket you may want to look at. He's going around this range, but I'm also catching wind in a lot of home league drafts. He's falling to double-digit rounds, which we're looking at next. But if you're drafting 0RB right now, this is when you're going to think about pivoting, because we got a lot of RB2s in this range. This is the area where you might stack up on a couple RB2s, a David Montgomery, a Zamir White, a DeAndre Swift, and a Raheem Mostert. However the draft falls, however the values go. If you're going 0RB, you've probably done it before. You're looking at the values, but this is the pivot range for most 0RB drafters. Old school 0RB drafters will pivot into double-digit rounds because they're planning to play the waiver wire, but they have experience doing that, and they've done it for quite some time. Rounds 10 through 13. This depends on your roster construction, but this is the area where you're fixing the lagging areas. And it's not sexy, it's not great, but you're pivoting to those wide receivers who get some targets, who can get you some splash production. You're getting some of these running backs who are going to be getting touches. The upside may not be immense, but you're looking at that. But once you feel good there, you're shooting for lottery tickets. This is where the upside starts. This is where we're really shooting for upside. The Blake Corums, the Trey Bensons, the Jalen Wrights, the guys catching passes out of the backfield, the guys that could emerge as the RB1 within a few weeks, those guys who are highly athletic. This is where we're shooting for upside at wide receiver and running back, and we're pounding that throughout the draft, and it goes even heavier. Rounds 14 to the end of the draft really starts at the double-digit rounds, but you're looking at those upside wide receivers, those upside running backs, maybe the other positions as well, but we're not drafting roster cloggers. Guys who are scoring fantasy points, but not enough fantasy points week to week to help you win your league. We're looking at backup players who have a lot of upside, and you might shake your head at that, but that's what everybody else is doing too. Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, Bucky Irvin, Marshawn Lloyd, Tyrone Tracy. You might have your favorites, but ultimately a lot of these running backs are waiting for an injury of the starting running back for them to get their opportunity. When it comes to lottery ticket wide receivers, draft them. Just don't draft too many. Limit yourself to 1 or 2, depending on how many rounds you're drafting. If you're drafting 20, you may get a couple. If you're drafting 16 rounds, you might only get 1. But I want to emphasize stacking running back. I want to be stacked at wide receiver in those first 5 rounds, get another one in the next few rounds, and then once I get to these double-digit rounds, I'm hammering running backs, I'm hammering upside, and I'm diamond fisting my favorite ones, and the ones that I'm so about, I'm flipping and turning and burning for the waiver wire. Late round quarterback, late round tight end, this is where you're looking at. Look at the matchups, for weeks 1, 2, 3, and going forward, but you're looking for the upside there, and you're just looking at the values and the players that you want to get with. Another upside play, if you're looking at the quarterback position, maybe like a Justin Fields, a guy that can get you rushing production that you can have as a QB2. I typically, in one quarterback leagues, do not hold two quarterbacks. If I paid up for a quarterback, I am using that quarterback. I'm not benching him, and if he gets hurt, then I'm playing the waiver wire. I am streaming. I'm playing the matchups. I'd rather have that roster spot for another wide receiver or running back, or maybe even a tight end with the upside. And usually with tight ends, I am drafting just one because I'd rather have that roster spot for another wide receiver or running back to cash in at to get another lottery ticket. And once those lottery tickets hit, and if I can get one of them to hit, or even two, there is a very good chance I'm winning this league. If not, it's going to backfill those starters that busted or got hurt. I'm also looking for some of my picks to bust. I'm looking to hit about 60 to 70% of my picks, having about 30 to 40% of them bust, and knowing that I'm going to have to hit the waiver wire, and knowing that the back end of my draft needs to funnel up to that upside. So that's why I'm really looking at these lottery tickets at the end of my draft. I'm shooting for upside. I'm looking for league winning players, and it's going to be very fluid. Some of you can do this with 0 RB, here RB, or any type of strategy really, but you need to know the player pools. You need to know when to pivot. You really need to know the stories of the average draft position of these players, because every layer of the draft, when drafters are drafting, they're telling us a story. There's lottery ticket alley in round 7 to 9 with these wide receivers. The RB2s are going in the middle rounds. The back end, you're seeing a lot of those rookies who are backups. You know this. If you look at the ADP, you're watching the rosters get constructed. You know this, but you got to know it when you go into your draft, or you're going to start stacking up at a position and realize, oh shit, I'm fucked at wide receiver. I'm screwed. My team's messed up, and now I got to hope for the waiver wire. Now I got the waiver wire planned already into my draft, into my strategy, and I'm good to go. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.